right now there's a scare. AI, oh my God, AI is here to take our jobs. And like, I don't want to see you again. I don't want anything to do with you. And it was so painful. It was so painful. I was in tears for days, like 3 days back to back. I was just crying. And it shook me. And I'm like, I cannot continue like this. Studies was really hard on me because I was like, oh my God, why am I doing this? But it felt like there was more on a personal level. Oh my God, I was drunk, or I was a drunkard. I was an alcoholic for 10 years. Who told this person to be an author?
My next guest on today's podcast is Ejiro Osakede, also known as Energetic EJ. She is a multifaceted individual, being a voiceover artist across books, audiobooks, conferences, and many other genres. More importantly, she's also a coach, MC, and a lot of many other things. This conversation has been really amazing for me to go and deep dive into the world of audio with her. And if you want to know what do voice artists do and how it has changed her life, how she got into the entire profession, I would highly recommend you to check out this podcast. So without much further ado, let me get on with it. Hi EJ, welcome to Masters Decoded Podcast Season 3. Really glad to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much, Anis Merchant, for having me.
Yeah, and I see your name, Energetic EJ, and I was like, okay, this session is going to be all energized and we are going to have fun. So, why Energetic EJ? So let's start with that, right? Why that name for you, for the benefit of the audience?
What a fantastic way to start.
Yeah.
So Energetic EJ is just about 3 years old. She was born in 2020 in the middle of COVID. This was when I truly reinvented myself and gave this name because it is what resonates with me. So I've always had this in me. It's a gift, but I didn't know what it was at the time. And different people would give it different names. You're too much. You're too out there. Calm down. You're too extravagant. You're too extraordinary. Like you're too extra, And, it was more like it was a bad thing to be that. And it felt like, okay, if I come into this circle and everyone is like, yay, I'm like, yes, let's do it. And then I come into this other circle and everybody's like, okay, I have to. And I mean, I'm not saying that, I will be this every time, but this is my default, right? I can adapt it to certain circles, but not in the personality. I mean, when you talk about professionally, for example, if I'm emceeing an event, of course, I don't want to be this, hey, everybody, if it's not that kind of event, right?
Yeah.
But as a person, I enter any room like, what's up, people? Right. But anyways, let's just say that is how Energetic EJ was born. Giving it that name actually affirms that this is a gift for me. My energy is my gift. This is what separates me from every other person in the room. And so it's a blessing that I am giving back to my world. So I enter into a room, I enter into a space, I connect with somebody, and I kind of transmit that positive vibe to that person for that moment. So that's how come Energetic EJ.
Very beautiful. But why did that reinvention happen 3 years ago? What prompted you to really come into this new avatar of yours and kind of define and create a persona or reaffirm a persona which always existed, but kind of give it a name, a shape, a name, specifically an identity that this is who I am? Why did the reinvention happen? What prompted you?
Again, we all knew what happened in 2020, right? Everybody was like, everywhere was chaos. Oh my God, what's going on? What are we going to do with this? Are we ever going to come out of this? Are we going to be banned to the indoors life forever? That was such a wonderful, wonderful period. But that was also when I delved into the coaching world, because I started to attend a lot of coaching programs online, and I started to appreciate what coaching was, what mentorship was. And it was in those seasons that part of the activity, was, this questioning of yourself, finding deep down and digging deep to actually articulate who we were, coming up with our personal statement. And that was one of the exercises I did. But another before that was just before COVID hit, I lost a dear relationship, all right, that set me on fire to actually look for, like, I cannot continue like this. Okay. So I lost this friendship. It was painful because I mourned this friendship. Because, the way, the circumstances with which I met this friend of mine, the relationship, how it blossomed in such a short time, the dreams we had together, the things that we wanted to do together, collaborations and everything, I was truly convinced that this friendship was made in heaven, that it was divinely orchestrated, that God had ordered my step to enter into this relationship, right? Right. And so when I lost it for something as flimsy as something happened, I said something, she wasn't happy with it. She told me she wasn't happy with it. And in the bid for me to be careful so that I don't hurt her further, I kept mute, and my attitude, everything changed. I am such, like, I'm translucent. When I'm sad, everyone knows I'm sad. When I'm happy, everyone knows I'm happy. When something is wrong, you can tell, right? But, the situation kept on, like, is everything okay? I'm like, oh yeah, everything is okay, but this is not me. Yeah. So it felt like something is wrong here. One thing led to the other. I couldn't be 100% myself because I didn't want to upset her further, but at the same time she took it, like, wrongly, like, oh, what is wrong? Like, you felt like you were attacking me. I'm like, oh my God. So anyways, that was the end. Like, I don't want to see you again. I don't want anything to do with you. And it was so painful. It was so painful. I was in tears for days, like 3 days back to back. I was just crying. And it shook me. And I'm like, I cannot continue like this. I cannot continue to lose relationship. Not like I've lost any. Okay. This was majorly the first major relationship, and I think it was because of how invested I was in it, like how I felt this was divine, it was meant to be, and then it's no longer exists. It was like a shocker, and I'm like, what? When I ask myself, like, why on this flimsy thing? So for me, it was more, okay, I didn't want to offend her, but what I eventually did was offend her. Yeah, offended her to the point where she was like, she doesn't want anything to do with me again. And I'm like, that to me was not being my authentic self. Because if I had been my authentic self and I'd come forth when she said what she said, and I said, actually, that is not what I meant, and I don't appreciate that you interpreted what I did in that manner, and maybe just had that conversation fully. If we had to scream at ourselves, we scream and then we settled. I think it would have been way better than me bottling things up and having that change my whole attitude and making that, evolve into what it evolved in. And I'm like, you know what? Going forward, I am going to be my authentic self. If anyone is not in collaboration with that, in acceptance of that, I will be okay with it. And I'll come to terms with it that this person is not meant to be in my life. And that's why they don't vibe with me. And it's okay. I'm not supposed to vibe with everyone. I can't please everyone, right? Yeah, exactly. I can't please everyone. So in that process, I started to dig deep. I did like a 6-week coaching program that helped me go deeper to see all my sages and my saboteurs. And my saboteurs, people pleasing was one of them. Hyperachieving was one of them. And so I started to pinpoint these things, and I started to know, okay, these are things that I need to work on, right? Especially the people pleasing. I need to stop it. I need to be my authentic self so that I can live fully and know that I cannot, most of us know it in our heads that, okay, you can't please everybody. Yeah. But when you have the tendency of people pleasing, sometimes it feels like you can't control it, because then you just want to be on the good side of everybody. And that is not possible. Yep. It's not possible, and it's not sustainable, right?
No, it is not.
Yeah. So when that happened, I had to just wake up and say, no, EJ, you can't. Anyways, I was Ejiro, like my full name is Ejiro, right? And it means praise. So I'm like, you know what, it can't happen. And I started to dig deep. And when it came to a point where I needed to draw up a personal statement, energetic is one of the things that popped out. And so at the time I was creating content as well. And so every time I popped on my video, I was like, hey guys, this is Ejiro Osakede, but you can call me the energetic EJ. And that was how it stuck, and a whole brand was created out of the energetic EJ.
Thank you for sharing a personal story. I'm sure it was tough during that time, and you went deep to understand the need and the reasons why it was impacting you. And it happens to all of us. Even I have been through it. And in fact, COVID was that a shake-up for many of us, where we realized, what life is, what our priorities are, what we have come to this world, and what is our motive, right? So there were a lot of things. And I've been through that, what I call the personal growth transformation framework, right? Where we all grow personally. And unfortunately, for many of us, right, we realize that late. But if for a lot of young folks, they definitely that introspection, like you did, and all of us have been through it. It's required every year or every 3 months or every 6 months. It's not when life hits you hard, like which it hit you and it has hit me also. You have to introspect, and these saboteurs can really take you to a very different spaces, right? And it's not fun. Taking a leaf from there, and you spoke about these circles which you have, right? And these are interesting circles, and I would love to double click on each one of them. So first is you yourself being a podcaster, right? And I'm sure this is not unreal for you being on a podcast show, because you're already doing a lot of podcasts. So what got you to start your podcast, and why the podcast is a medium to communicate, to share stories and bring your perspective and your guest perspective ahead?
Okay, so when I started my podcast in 2019, I dabbled into it earlier on, like 2014, 15, just playing around.
Okay.
It's even funny how I got email that that some of my content were being pulled out because of music I used that had copyright issue. I'm like, what? Almost 10 years later, guys, free me.
Yeah, everything should be free.
But that's interesting to know. Yeah. Anyway, so when I wanted to start again in 2019, it was more of out of a discomfort I was feeling. Was it a discomfort or a yearning? I would say, like, I am more than this. Like, there's more to me than this. So I'm a lot of things, like you mentioned. I wear many hats. I'm a singer. So at the time, I was not singing in the full capacity like I used to. Before I came to Dubai, I used to be like, I was a recording artist. So I was, a gospel singer. I was singing in concerts, organizing concerts myself, but also, ministering in churches and places.
Nice.
But when I came, all of that, kind of slowed down, because this was new to me. It was more Islamic in nature. I wasn't sure how I was going to fit in or play in that. Plus, I was here for studies. So at the time, studies was really hard on me, because I was like, oh my God, why am I doing this? It was me in a class of people who were half my age and all of that. So it was a lot for me to handle. But I'd begun to settle into it. I came in 2018, so the whole of 2018, and then towards 2019, and at the time I was studying audio engineering, right? So it was already, I'm in that field.
Yeah.
I was already focused on doing that with my business as an audiobooks creator for African authors. But it felt like there was more on the personal level. Like there was more I could do with my voice. And so I started to think, like, what can I do? Podcasting was calling to me, but I was like, what am I going to talk about? What was I comfortable and confident enough to talk about at the time? And, conversation with me, my partner at the time, my son, we had that conversation. At the end of the day, the whole conversation led to me saying, okay, you can start, okay? You have our blessing, you can start. And by the time I thought of, okay, what area would I cover? At the time in 2019, I was more comfortable and confident in my faith. Right, so it was a safe haven for me. It was a place of comfort and familiarity, and so I started from there. I'm like, okay, you know what? I already sing in church, but I want to take it outside of church. Yeah. And so I started Worship Song of the Week, which was every week I come up and say, you know what, this particular song blessed me in such a way, or it helped me through a hard week, or I was just singing this all through and I felt great, and so I started to do that. But I get bored easily, right? As a sanguine. And so after, I'm like, I can't keep on telling people about one worship song. How long is it going to last for?
Yeah.
So to spice it up, I started to ask other people. So I started to bring guests on to also ask them what was their worship song of the week, why did they choose it, what was the message, and then it morphed later on into me speaking to gospel artists to ask what was the story behind their songs, why did they write the song, why did they perform the song. But at the mark of 1 year, it was becoming a struggle for me to stay consistent, or I was just not feeling it anymore. And I think because it was also spiritually inclined, I didn't want to make it all about content.
Yeah.
So at the time, I think I was also having personal struggles, with my spirituality, with my work with God. And so I felt like there are weeks I would go without actually spending time listening to worship songs. So if I pick up a song and just speak, it was like, this is just content. This is not my worship song of the week. Yeah. So I didn't want that to happen. So I was struggling. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go on a break. And if I go on a break and this thing is still in me and maybe I find that fire again, I'll come back to it.
Yeah.
But 1 month into my break, I had got into a conversation with a couple, and then, like, EJ, you're so good at this podcasting of a thing, how about we, create, since you are pausing or something, or you're on a break, how about we look at maybe a more open podcast, that can involve more topics, more circular in nature. And so we agreed, we're going to do Afrocentrist because we wanted to spotlight, Africans doing great stuff outside of Africa, in diaspora and all of that. I'm like, that's not bad at all. Let's do it. Yeah. And then we jumped into it and then we started. But because we started off as a collaboration, so it was supposed to be a collaboration, right? But I think along the line, life happened. They got really busy. And so we weren't able to really pull in our strength. So it felt like everything was back on me. And I'm like, no, I cannot let this die again. No. This cannot happen. I cannot stop another podcast within how many months. It's not going to happen. I'm going to push. Whatever happens, I'm going to figure this out.
Yeah.
And so I started to experiment. Oh my God, Anis, you don't want to, I experimented. I started to introduce different segments on the podcast. So I basically had content for every day of the week. I had Business Monday, I had Discovery Tuesday, I had The Woman, Her Story, Her Impact on Wednesdays, I had live sessions on Thursday.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I was just about... I know. I introduced Fun Fridays. And it was at Fun Fridays that at the mark, I think we had only maybe 2 or 3 episodes of that. I'm like, girl, you're going to kill yourself.
Wow. And I can get only one done in a week. I'm like, yay, I did it, right? Like doing it for 5 days back to back, that will be a lot of energy, right? So
I know, right? So, it was fun. It was fun because the Monday one was every other Monday, and the Tuesday one I had people join me to co-host it. So I wasn't the one hosting it, but I was the one editing it and all of that. So they hosted it and I edited it, and then the Wednesday one was me. And anyways, it was fun for how long it lasted. But again, it was a process for me. It was my own process. It was my journey. I learned from it. But in that process, when it was becoming like, man, this is stretch. It's a stretch for me, right?
Yeah.
I went in back for like a refresher's course. I joined a challenge for podcasters. And for the first time, I understood and I accepted. So I understood it before, but I didn't accept it. The concept of niching down and focusing. For me, I'm like, no, I'm too multi-talented to be niche. It's not gonna work. Like, no, where am I going to put the rest of the talent? Where am I going to put the rest of the expression? Yep. But when I went through that course or that challenge, it was clear to me how more effective it would be if I focused on one area. Okay. And that was when I did so basically before then I'll go on breaks after 13 episodes.
Okay.
I'll go on maybe like a week or 2 weeks break. Sometimes the break lasted for like a month, and then I'll come back with the next season. And so I had to just take a break. Like, okay, you know what, let me take a break and go back to the drawing board and say, okay, if we were going to pull off all of this and bring it all together and do one thing, which one was I going to do?
Right.
Now, I didn't want to be, I've run away from this for the longest time, like anything women focused only. It kind of like, no. I'm very inclusive.
Yeah.
Right. But it's funny how it's now circled back because my coaching now is basically focused on women. But, when I sat down to reevaluate, I felt like the one that I could sit with for the longest time, that is like an anchor to me, I can't get tired of it, was tapping into the stories of other people. And I think the segment that really covered that was the woman, her story, her impact, which was my Wednesday segment, or my Wednesday, this thing. And I felt like, okay, but now I don't want to restrict it to women. So what about the stories do I want to focus on? And that was when I said, you know what? I had a couple of names. I can't even remember the different options, but Stretch Street popped out because I'm in a coaching program, and our lead coach would always say, okay, on this, you're on the stretch street, right? Where you'll be stretched to enter into your capacity.
Okay.
But that word popped at me. And for me, it was more like, you know what? Life actually is a street. And on this street called life, we keep getting stretched up until the point of snapping. But somehow, as humans, we find our way back. So how are people able to navigate their stretchy periods? But more importantly, what are the lessons that those seasons teach them? If I can be a collector or an aggregator of those challenging stories and the life lessons that they learn from it, it becomes a body of work, a body of references to be a source of inspiration to anyone who cares to watch or listen. That yes, life is stretchy. Challenges are not exclusive to any of us. We all go through them. But the difference is the posture that we assume. When we assume the posture of victim, then we will keep being victim of life, and everything will keep looking like everything is working against me. Oh, why me?
Yeah.
But when we assume the posture of learning to say, okay, yes, this is a challenge. Yes, it is stretchy. But what is it here to teach me? Then we begin to distill the power of those seasons. And when we're able to capture those lessons and we share them, we become a source, we become a resource to other people. Because then you're not telling them, oh, I used to be a drunkard. Oh my God, I was drunk. Or I was a drunkard. I was an alcoholic for 10 years. But at some point, I got to my tipping point. It broke me and did this, and this. I was able to come out of it. And today, these are the kind of stories that I'm now collating through the podcast. And so that was how the story came into now from Afrocenturies now to Stretch Street podcast. And so, yeah.
Wow. Wow. No, what I'm getting the theme is that how you've been able to pivot and move ahead and try different things and, kind of almost have your calling in spaces which you really get passionate about. And you're building on that further, and I think it's beautiful to where things are. So, do you still go ahead and be part of choir? You still have the song of the week or the gospel of the week?
No, so that I put up close to that. Where I don't know, who knows? It might pop up again, but for now it's just there. But that's the beauty of podcasting again, right?
Yes.
That the contents are there.
Yes.
They will always be there. Anybody can still go and be blessed by it. Like sometimes I still check the stats and it keeps going up. People are still listening, even though I've stopped production, right? So it's there, and who knows? Who knows? You never can tell. So I've come to a point in my life where I never say never.
Yeah.
I can just go back there and pop it up and say, you know what? We are back to Worship Song of the Week. Because again, we are dimensional humans, right? So we have all these different facets to us. So if I want to lubricate or keep lubricating my spiritual part of me openly, I can tap into that again. And say, okay, you know what? With my spiritual people, with my fellow Christians, this is how I want to serve. I can tap into that again. And then Stretch Street is going to be for everyone, So I don't know, but it's there.
Nice. Yeah. building on this further, what you've just said, EJ, is that how things have evolved for you. And you came to Dubai to study audio engineering, right? But why Dubai, of all the places in the world? Why Dubai, and why that became your destination?
Well, because before we made that decision, because it was a combined decision with me and my partner at the time. I had paused my goal or my dream of being educated. I had a very rough beginning, and so I what, if my dad is not going to send me to school, that's it, I'm not going, because I've had fair share of disappointment from people and everything. So, but at the end of the day, when I settled down a little bit, and my younger ones were starting to get settled, at the point where the baby of the house, like, she's already in school and everything, I'm like, okay, maybe I can go back to school now.
Yeah. Wow.
But then at the time, we had been coming to Dubai for holidays, and one of those years, I think in 2016, I did a short course at SAE, so that school was in my head already. So by the time we decided, ending of 2017, that maybe I should get a degree, and that was supposed to be my first degree, by the way. I had diploma before in Nigeria, but this was supposed to be my first degree. And so
Nice.
Okay, when we considered everything, because it was more like, you're going to school now at old age, right? It's not like I'm going from high school pop into university. So there is no reason whatsoever for me to just go because I just want to go to school. No.
Yeah.
You had to be clear. What do you want to do? You're an adult at this point. What do you want to do? So by the time we looked at it, it was a deep conversation. We looked at it like, okay, everything I've done so far has almost evolved around audio. I was speaking. I've been trained as an on-air personality. I was singing already, being recorded as an artist. I was already teaching or speaking in one capacity or the other. And then I had already latched onto the vision of being an audiobook creator for African authors. So I'm like, what, audio is calling at me.
Yeah.
Maybe, and at the time, my understanding was, when you have something like a stamp of authority in your field, it establishes your authority more. Yeah. So the only natural thing that came to mind at the time was, if you have a degree in audio engineering, it stamps you as an authority in your field, because then you know more in the audio, and then this passion or this dream is not just fluffy, it is deeply rooted. And that's why I chose it. But would I say that was the best decision? I don't know, because now I did it. Of course, COVID hit and a lot happened with finances, and I couldn't complete it. But at the point I got to, I could exit with my associate degree in audio engineering, right? So, but then I'm not doing anything per se with it right now.
Yeah.
I have evolved, and I'm now more into the coaching space. I'm like, I don't know. No, you see.
Yeah.
But I believe that no knowledge is wasted, and there is a role it's going to play in my life eventually. And I think it's played some roles actually, because right now, with my freelancing, sometimes I'm able to quickly record something for someone, or I actually even do that as a service that I offer for events, because I also got into the event space during COVID, especially, virtual events, hosting virtual events, planning virtual events, but also doing that in person. So I would do jingles, I would do speaker bios. Wow. Right. So I still do that. I still get paid for that right now. So again, all of it is still coming together. I do my own production right now. I can train people to do that. So I have trainings in podcasting where I train people how to set up, but also the technical part of things. So again, everything is still handy. Yeah. So,
this part is very interesting, right? Like, where you are the voice behind many books. And you just said you also do jingles, you do speaker bios, and you record them. That career is so new in the entire industry. Now, you've had voiceover artists, they've been there, right, for many, many years. Since the time of radio and since the time of television, voiceover artists have always been part of it. There. Now, it's no longer just radio jingles or radio conversations or TV or backgrounds of the conversation. It's morphed into many things, like you just said, speaker bios, or doing jingles for certain conferences, or doing audiobook, speaking for the audiobook. How is that space evolving? I'm sure there are a lot of people who would want to lend their voice, I would use that word, for, either doing part-time or, I know a friend who, he's a professional, he's a CEO of a company, but he's also a radio jockey, and he does that radio jockey because he just loves it, right? It's
fueling his passion, honestly.
Yeah.
There's a fulfillment that comes from that would help him perform more in his corporate job. That's just the truth.
Yeah.
Right. And I think we miss that because there's a lot of factors that add up to that anyways. But yeah, I would say that, right now there's a scare, AI, oh my God, AI is here to take our jobs.
Yeah.
But for me specifically, in the African market, it is still pretty new. And yes, it is what it is. We latch on late to trends, to tech and everything, but there is still space for us. There's still room for us. So for example, AI right now, there are platforms, audio platforms, where there are voices that as close to human voices as possible.
Yeah. But what about the emotional aspect, right? If I'm reading a book...
They're pretty getting good, honestly. They're pretty getting good.
Okay.
But the thing is, again, for my market, they're not there yet at all. Because first of all, is even the humans, right? The humans themselves, they find it difficult to sound like us in Africa, right? Yeah. So it's still
there is that inclusion aspect which people are not even considering.
Exactly.
Yes.
So it's something that, even the AI engineers should start to look into. Yeah. But for now, my message is, right now, there is none. There are a couple that has dabbled, but it still does not sound like us. Please, stop it. We don't like it.
Yeah, it's fake.
You're not sounding like me.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a space for us as Africans. I guess maybe for other non-English speaking community as well, that is something that they can look into, because what we have that are like almost close to reality are the English speaking people. So you hear a British AI voice, sounds like human. They've already practiced enough or trained enough, learned enough to really add the emotion, the pauses. It's no longer sounding like, okay, welcome to the show today. My name is Energetic EJ. They actually now sound like, no, welcome to the show today. My name is Energetic EJ. Like, they're already putting those inflections and tones.
Yeah.
But they don't have that for the different non-English speaking races yet.
Yes.
And so that's a window that we can still plug into.
But even sorry, I'm interrupting, but even somebody like talking English but to Indian audience, or you speaking to your African community, you're speaking English, but that dialect is also very different, and that's where AI is still, the accent, the dialect is very different. The AI is still not there, right? And if you've lived in that community, you've grown up in that community, you will say, hey, this is not a real human being, right? And that's where the difference happens. So, I just wanted to share that perspective, that there's still a lot of room, right? People think that AI is going to take over jobs. No, there's still time. Definitely it may happen in the future, maybe a year, 3 years, 5 years, we don't know, but there is space for that.
But now there's still a window. Yes.
Yeah.
There's still a window that we can tap into, and again it's actually going to be like in a way a collaboration, right? Because who's going to teach the AI? It's still us.
Yeah.
So it means that if they hear more of us, then they can learn it to get better. Because at the end of the day, AI is supposed to enhance what it already exists.
Yep.
Right? So, but they need to learn it. So we need more of our voices so they can learn it.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's what I'm trying to, do in that regard. I don't know that I'm doing a great job of it, but I try. Every time I have the opportunity to speak on it, I try to sow the seeds. I'm a believer in seeds. Like, okay, because I also believe that I'm an inspirator by design. So there are things I say, there are things I allude to that sometimes are not for me, and I've noticed. But they flow through me as a channel, and then the person who is for catches it and runs with it. Do you see? So that's why I also do not keep quiet, or I'm not afraid to be here and there sometimes, because I know that sometimes the things that come to me are not for me.
Very interesting.
But the person it's for has access to me, hears my language, speaks my language, understands me, connects with me. So when I say it, they understand it even better than I am saying it, and they run with it. And so I'm not afraid to say, oh, this is something that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that that's like what I am, sitting down on. Okay. But, it is what it is. And that's why I'm not also afraid to evolve. I've evolved a lot over the years, and I'm not afraid to evolve. So if I start a project now and it's looking like, okay, it's not working, I just go back and ask, like, maybe I didn't hear correctly, or I didn't feel it correctly, I didn't listen to my intuition correctly, right? Or maybe I did not spend enough time to chew on it, to sit on it. This one I'm learning now, because as a sanguine and as a very, very, quick person, we think on our feet like we're quick, right? But that's the blessing of an introvert. An introvert will chew on it. They will sit on it. They will look at all the different scenarios. What are the possible, what's the worst case scenario? It's just that sometimes they now overdo it unto the point of being paralyzed. Like, okay, it's a lot of work, I can't do this, right? So it's like finding a balance between it. So as somebody who is extra, who likes to do, I need to learn consciously, right, and intentionally how to chew on things, especially ideas, to brood on it, to make it sit, to look at, okay, what are the possible outcomes? What's the best route to go about it? These things I'm learning as I go. And I'm not saying it works all the time, but I'm grateful for my journey. And that's why life is exciting, really, because it's a journey, right? So
it is.
If you lose your way, if you're in Dubai and you're driving and you lose your turn, it's fine. It might add like 20 minutes to your time, but you're still going to get to your destination.
Definitely. And this is where people kind of worry a lot, right? Oh, I missed that. It's okay. Even if you missed it, right? You will not be able to get to everything at the perfect time, right? Maybe that reroute of your travel may give you a different exposure, may give you a different perspective, or it was okay to be late because nobody showed up for that meeting, right? Or for that party, right? So things happen, and they happen for good, and let the life flow and you surrender. Building on what you just said, right? Now when I think about books, right, all books are not, they don't appeal to me also. And I'm sure it's the same to you. But being an audio artist or somebody who's giving that voiceover, there is a book, you don't feel it, but since you've taken the contract, now you have to give your 100%. So how does that work in your mind, and how are you able to get connected to that book so that when people listen to that book, they say, yes, that had a lot of emotions, it had a lot of perspectives, but true to you, you didn't connect to that book. So how do you bring that balance in?
Okay, so I am also is the fact that not all books are great for audiobooks.
Yeah.
And I learned this the hard way as well. I'd already gotten this huge project from a particular author to do almost 30 works, 30 of his books. Of course, I just had to, employ more hands to do this project with me. But the thing is, there were books, and because of the timing, I was also excited to get on this project. Oh my God, I'm doing a lot of work and everything, but I didn't pay enough attention to look into some of the books to see the content of it. So some of them had tables.
Wow.
And they had tables, they had pictures. And so you hear in the text, like, okay, if you see the picture above, I'm like, oh my God, what picture above? Like, whoever is listening to this is going to feel cheated.
Yeah.
Like, so there's a picture above. How am I supposed to see? How am I supposed to see a picture above or the table below? Yeah. Right? These things I started to learn, like, okay, so now I know that not all books are meant to be audiobooks. So one of the things that we do, if I don't do this mainstream anymore, but I still do it one-on-one. My first touch is my connection with the author. That's the first touch. Because when I'm able to connect with you as the author, you can as well take me into your mind as to the kind of message that you want to pass across.
Yeah. Where you want me to emphasize, where you want me to just
exactly.
through.
I've done a story for someone before that I didn't narrate it because the story was meant to be the story was in a male's voice. So I had a male do the thing but I was the production person, right? So I had the male do it, and the male guy had a good voice, right?
Yeah.
But in the way the story was told, it wasn't explicitly explained that the male voice was a Caucasian.
Oh,
I didn't capture that. And so the person who is the storyteller, the author, mostly writes, African-based stories. So it didn't occur to me to even ask, like, okay, this particular work. And so we did. I felt good. The guy's voice was very manly and everything. He did his best, And then by the time we gave the project to the author was like, I'm sorry, I can't use this. Like, the male voice is supposed to be Caucasian. I'm like, what?
Oh, wow.
Do you see? So these are some of the things that we need to pay attention to. You need to have a conversation with the author. So there are different ways to go about it. If you're doing this as a freelancer and you're connecting with the author directly, then yes, you have that liberty. But if you're working with a production house like a publisher, you don't have connection with the author. The publisher does. So the publisher needs to do that work. Yeah. They need to find out, okay, what the story is about, what the character or who the characters should be, right? So I didn't know that, and then that job was just all the effort wasted on that one, right? So again, but when you talk about the connection to the story itself, it's an ongoing process. First of all, is you need to prepare yourself. You need to also go through the content. Read through to understand, okay, first of all, how many characters are here? Is it necessary for us to like truly bring out all the characters? So does this work? Is this work going to be better if it's multi-characters? If it's multiple voices on it? Or is it okay if we narrate it? Because sometimes it also depends on how it is written. Sometimes the stories are written in first person voice.
Yes.
Which means all the voices have to have their own characters. In that regard, if one person is doing it, it might lose some of the feel of what the author had in mind. So these are things that we need to pay attention to. But if it is written in a third person's voice, then it means one person can just narrate it and just maybe emote. So the person doesn't necessarily have to do all the characters, but they would emote the characters to say, okay, and he said, and maybe not doing a character, but carrying a voice for it that makes it feel different. Do you get what I mean?
Yes.
Right? So all of these things, So again, is once you go through the story, then So that's why all of this I learned, like, for me, most of the things I've done in my life were done out of passion first. I just dive in. I'm passionate about it, I dive in, and then I learn to swim along the way. But now I'm learning, I always learn in hindsight, like, okay, now you probably need to say, you know what? This project is a project. It's going to probably take 2 months.
Nice.
The first 2 weeks, I have to go through the story to know if it's a good fit for me, if it's something I can do, or at least give me a synopsis as the author. Some authors are also afraid, like, oh, if I give you my book and then what if it doesn't work? So you have access to it and so all of that. So it's like, okay, give me a synopsis, but also give me like a chapter.
Yeah.
Like, what's your best chapter? That maybe the chapter that carries more of the characters or the more of the message. Let me do a sample for you. If you think it's good enough, then we can take it on. And so when we take it on, it's also constantly at every point is a back and forth. There was one book I did was a story. It was very sensual. The first time I had, the conversation with the author, I was like skeptical, like, I don't think I can do this. Oh my God. There are like very, very 18 rated kind of scenes there. Like, But, we had that conversation and she made me know, like, I don't know why this is your job, right?
Yeah.
And I don't understand why you're being, your thinking is not in the right place. Because first of all, I was like, oh, it's sensual, everything's okay. What's the difference between this one and the thriller where there's going to be murders and killings, splashings of blood, versus like these are things that happen in real life. So that author did convince me, like, you have a point. This is my job. Like, it's like if I'm acting a movie, I'm not going to say, oh, I don't want to kiss. but the scene says kiss. This is what you signed up for as an actor, right?
Yeah.
So as a narrator, it's part of what you signed up for. Of course, there's also the part as a narrator to say, you know what, I'm sorry, I can't do this. It's fine. It's your choice. Yeah, exactly. You can say this, I'm not going to take up any role or any book that negates, my values and things like that, and that's okay. But if you're in the craft of it, you should be versatile enough to be able to handle different. And again, it's a challenge for me. When that conversation happened, I'm like, no, I'm gonna do this. What's that? I'm good at what I do, right? And so I took up the job. But even in the delivery of it, it's a constant back and forth with me. So every chapter I do, I send it to the author. She goes through it or he goes through it and said, no, this, and this, I don't want, you have to redo them. And that's it. And that's how we do it. And then until the full job is complete. So it's a work in progress. It's not something that, because I've done that in the past, I just take up the work, go record, and then come back, and then the author is like, I'm sorry, you missed the point here. I'm like, oh my God.
It must be difficult, right? Because I'm just thinking right now, because these books can be small and they can be huge, right?
Yes.
It can be a book which you record for an hour and you record a book for 6 hours.
Yes.
It can be a train wreck. I don't know how you can still keep that passion, that energy and focus, and still ensure that after the second hour you are kind of, that energy is dying off and you're forgetting the character, you've missed the character, now you're just reading it for the heck and saying, just let's get out of it. So the point which I'm trying to get to is, what is your practice or mental practice, spiritual practice before you do something like this, right? You spoke about a lot of preparedness, but just that hour before the recording, or 30 minutes.
No. So with the work, like you said, there are different sizes, right? There are ones that you look at and okay, this is so there's a way we calculate how many hours a work is going to be at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But that's like, when you calculate the hours that's going to be at the end of the day, then you have to times it times 3 to know the amount of hours you're going to spend doing it.
Wow.
So that means that if a book is going to, the final work is going to be 3 hours long, it means it's going to take you nothing less than 9 to 12 hours to work on it, to produce it.
Wow.
And that's including the recording, the editing, and everything. So that means, that's why, most averagely, I tell my clients, a book, I don't even, I like, whether it's small or, because I like to under promise and over deliver, right?
Yeah.
So I tell you, it's going to take 2 months, 8 weeks. 8 weeks. Right? So because in that 8 weeks, I will be able to, so again, it's not even possible.
Yeah.
Unless you're on steroids or something. For you to record one huge book at one sitting, it's not going to work. You're going to get fatigued. And when you get fatigued, you would not see, you'll be reading, but you would not be seeing what you're reading anymore. The words will begin to jumble in your eyes. Like you begin to skip words, or you begin to add words that are not there.
Yeah.
So at that point, you're tired.
You can make your own story up, right? As part of that, because you're bored of it and you're like, okay, let me just add the oomph and and e, right? Like just like that.
And say what to the author. Like you rewrote their stories.
Yeah.
Right. So again, so it's like so there's a technical part of it that it's advisable to record in chapters, right? And it's funny that, some books, their chapters are not even. Some chapters are long. And you're like, oh my God, when is this going to end? And you skip through and like, oh my God, 10 more pages. But that's another reason why you should look at everything so that you can be well prepared for each chapter. So that at least the least you can do is record 1 chapter per session. So you sit, once you start on that chapter, you don't get up until you finish the chapter. So if you have an idea how long it is, you can prepare. Okay, if this is a long one, then you don't want to have too much water, before the session. You don't want to have too much food so that you're not tired. You don't have too much water so you're not going to the washroom, so frequently. So that you can at least, sit in with it for, say, ideally, no person with their eye senses should have a chapter that is longer than an hour. Even with the way Audible and the other platforms collect it, a chapter cannot be more than 2 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, 120 minutes. Okay. So ideally, a chapter should not be longer than that. So that means that, you're setting aside at least 2 hours or 3 hours max but that's also a long time to sit in one position, right?
Yeah.
So again, it's like the thing with recording the chapters in one take is because of the way it will sound and the consistency of the tone.
Yeah.
Because I'm on this mic now. If I get up and I sit again, the tone can never be the same.
Yeah.
It can never be the same.
Or like say we are doing this podcast right now, and if he said, let's take a 5-minute break and come back.
Yes, it can never sound, you will hear it. You will hear it that's, okay, something switched. It might be minimal, but for those who are quick to catch it, they'll catch it, right? And so most of the audio platforms as well do not want that inconsistency.
Yeah.
And so that's why, but with each chapter, there's always a break. Like by the time you end one chapter, they'll now say, chapter 2. So that gives you, it's like, okay, this particular audio track is done. Now we're moving to another one. So even if it has a slightly different tonality, it's not so glaring because there's been that break in transmission to say another chapter, right? So all of these things are some of the things that we need to put into consideration so that you're well prepared before you sit on the mic, and then you do it, and then you can record, you can edit later. And you need to also consider, like, there are times, no matter how prepared you are, you still miss one word, or you mispronounce a word, or you jump a word, or you add a word. In fact, if you add a word that is not there, it's even easier than leaving a word out, because that means you probably need to re-record that whole chapter or that
re-record that whole chapter, or just the sentence?
Yeah, sometimes.
Or a paragraph?
Yeah. So it depends, because unless you have a stable setup and you're able to get as close to your setup as possible, then if you redo, but no matter how you do it, if you redo a section, you will hear it.
Okay.
You would hear it. The tonality will be different. So it's like mid-section. Like you're saying something, there's just that drop, like, what happened there?
Yeah.
And most times with the narration, most platforms do not appreciate like bed, like a music, like a background, except if it's like maybe meditational, or most is like dry, so it's just your voice, so everything will be picked. Wow. So yeah, it's a lot of work, but I mean
no, this is fascinating to hear, because I've listened to quite a bit of audiobooks, so my capture of knowledge is through podcasts, through books, which I love to read on physical books. I've tried Kindle or the digital books. It don't appeal me much because I like to touch and feel, but there are certain books which you can listen, right? If you're in a gym, if you're in a walk, and I've listened to, and I always wonder, like, that's why I went deeper into it, like, how did they just ensure that they had that same level of passion and conversation? So, I just want to talk about the passion a little bit, the fiction and the non-fiction. You can still do a lot of fictional stuff, right? It's fun, it's interesting, thriller, romance, conspiracies, all of that you can build on, right? Because it's interesting for you also to recite. But when it comes to non-fiction, it can get boring as hell, right? So how do you balance that aspect there, right? That, hey, this and that,
You're paid to do the job, you get it done.
Nice. Okay, that answers my question. Yeah. Okay.
But some authors are quite interesting.
Yeah.
Even though it's non-fiction, it's so for example, if it's a self-help book, it's more like you are reading the book and you're getting light bulb moments.
Yeah.
It's exciting, like, wow, this book is so rich.
Yeah.
So unless you're unlucky and you get a very shitty book, you're like, gosh, who told this person to be an author?
Have you had that situation? So let me ask you, have you had that situation?
No.
I know you may not reveal it, but that's okay. Okay, that's fun. Interesting. But let me ask you a question in a different way, right? If you look back and you've done so many audiobooks, that's one which really touched your heart, right? Which really said that this is, I believed in it, right? And I completely got sold into the entire story, or even if it was And I would love to hear if there's a fiction and then there is a non-fiction book also. So do you have those examples?
Yeah. So I have a couple of those. And I think the ones that made it to mainstream, there are some that didn't make it to mainstream. So I have like at least 2 or 3 on Audible. One is the gospel. It says 3 things the gospel projects. Okay. That was good. But there's this one I told you about that at first I was like, oh, this is sensual. Yeah. That project stretched me. And I grew through it because the author was really particular. And so that taught me a lot. Okay. It taught me patience. It taught me patience, especially because, like the tiniest, and then it taught me to be more intentional about paying attention to details.
Nice.
Don't skip anything. If for any reason you're trying to, say a line and you feel maybe you're not sure of the pronunciation, please pause. Go to the dictionary. Look for the pronunciation. If you're not sure, let's say it's a local name, for example, pause. Give the author a call and say, please, how do you pronounce this name? Yeah. Or if it's tribal, look for somebody from that tribe and call, because, attention to details is very important. I learned it from that particular story, right? Yeah. And then knowing that, oh my God, it's a job. Wow. And if you are going to be exceptional at your job, you need to be really versatile. You need to be well-rounded. Yeah. Of course, you can hide under the umbrella of niching and say, I don't do this is my niche. I only stick with self-help books, and that's fine. Yeah. But if you want to say, I'm an exceptional narrator, you should be able to take on works that are challenging or will stretch you, or you get better at it, right? So again, it's like those words. And if for any reason you made a mistake, says, for example, this says the path of most resistance. At its fundamentally flawed core, the aim of almost any learning program is to help us become who we are not. Yeah. If you don't have natural talent with numbers, you're still forced to spend time in that area to attain a degree. If you're not very empathetic, you get sent to a course take. Did you see that? Yeah. Because this is the continuation of a line, but I didn't quite get it because I've not read it before, right? I didn't prepare for this. So in that instance where there feels like there's a pause, your eyes have not quickly gone to the next to see, oh, this is actually a full sentence. So the sentence started from, if you're not very empathetic, you get sent to a course designed to infuse empathy into your personality. Now that's a full sentence. But the first time I did it, I had a break in a place where there is no comma. If you sense that it is better for you to do that sentence all over again and have at least 2 to 3 takes. Wow. Because at the point of editing, if you don't, then it's a bigger headache. Because that means you probably have to record the whole chapter or the whole paragraph, and it's going to affect the whole production. So it's better to have multiple takes while you're recording than have just one take that has an error. But if you have multiple takes, you would at least have 1 or 2 that are good, and you pick the best one and discard the rest. So again, it's a lot of work, but it's so in that sense, the that fictional one, and there's a very short one. It's a short one. Yeah. Productivity Checklist by Ejiro Osakede is very practical. I loved working on that one. Very simple. I think the whole thing was a very short book. Okay. The whole thing was not up to an hour, maybe 30 minutes or less. Oh, wow. And it was really, it was very short, but I loved it. And then of course my book, because it was fun. It was I'm teaching my book again. Yes. Yeah. I was able to do all the emotions. Okay, you're in class in session. Let's do this.
And this is so meaning something which kind of struck me while you were saying all of this, right? Your preparedness, your focus, and how you're going about being a narrator and giving your voice to books which probably needed that. You're not just doing it at a surface level. People think about building these plural careers as it's called. It's not a single career that, hey, you're just not an MC. You're just not a narrator for books. You're just not a podcaster. You're basically taking that skill of a great orator, and you've built careers around that, and you've just not built it for the heck of it. Okay, I can also be an audiobook narrator, or I can also be an MC. You've gone deep into it. You've really kind of mastered the art. Like, you've gone deep into what it takes to do something like this, right? And hearing you for last few minutes about how the focus and the process to narrate a book, it's just fascinating to hear, right? And when we were talking in the first half about your podcast and all of that, it's fascinating to hear that you're just not doing it at the surface level, right? It's like some people will say, oh, I can also do it, right? Let me try my hand at it, right? It's like you're just dabbling. You're going deep into it, and you're spending your time and energy behind it. So, this has been an amazing conversation, EJ. It's I've learned a lot personally, and this was one piece which I really wanted to double click. I'm going to put you on a spot, and I've been thinking about it since you started off. You said you sing, and you,
yes.
Why not? Let's give it a try, right? Let's give it on this platform, right? And I'm not, I just want to hear you sing, right? Let's say.
You want to hear me sing?
Yeah.
What song do I sing now?
Your choice. It can be a prayer or something which kind of appealed to you this week, right? Let's keep it to that, right?
Okay, so I'll do this one. I think I'm choosing this. I could have done my song, but let's just check me out, okay? Check out Ejiro Osakede. You get my songs. I have a couple of singles out there, but I'll pick in this one, just one verse, because I want to connect it to everything I've been saying. And when you said, it felt like I am digging deep into all this different expression, and when you said that, what came to mind is because, like I said, when I dabble into these things, I am going passion head first.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it because, oh, well, this can make me money, let's go, right? For me, it's first the passion. And because it is passion, it deepens the interest.
Yeah.
It deepens the research or the dabbling of it, right? So I want to dig deeper, like, okay, this is good, right? So it's the passion for me. And why I want to do this particular song is to say that believe in yourself. I had the capacity to, I had the tendency to, but I probably lacked the support at the time, or the guidance or the mentorship in that regard. So I lost it at some point. I lost my voice at some point. I lost my dreams at some point. Like, I just felt like it's no point dreaming, because of the curveballs that life threw at me. I just there is no point. Okay. And they're part of my goals and my dreams as a child that I also backbenched. But some of them are finding expression now, and it is fulfilling, knowing that it's like when you the cups might not be able to express themselves, but when you use them for the purpose of which they are created, they are satisfied. So when I know that the gifts and the talents that God has blessed me with is being put to use to inspire, to motivate, to bless somebody, the fulfillment that comes from that, money cannot buy. So believe in yourself. And for the longest time, it was difficult for me to align with my gut, but it has always been there so vividly. Sometimes it comes to me in flashes, like I would literally see what possibilities are there. But I would allow the noise, the different opinions of people, and the fear of being rejected. My people pleaser at the time would stop me from saying the things that I saw or from doing the things that have come to me. But I've, grown above that now. And so I'm on this mission to actually help women especially do the same thing. So I'm going to do this song that, you see, when that happens, when you're able to get in alignment with your gut, with yourself, with your being, with your talent, with your gifting, it feels like a miracle. Like you're a living, breathing, walking miracle, because things just begin to align. That is not to say there won't be challenges, there would be, but it's like it's a miracle when you see people who have been through hell and still see them exuding joy and satisfaction and positivity. It's like, who are you, girl?
Yeah.
What's making you think? Yes. But this is when you believe enough in yourself to take a chance on yourself. So I would do There Can Be Miracles When You Believe. I wish I could play a backing track, but I don't know, with copyright things now, you never can tell. So we're just going to do it dry.
Sure. Not a problem.
Many nights I pray with no proof anyone could hear. In our hearts a hopeful song we barely understood. Now we are not afraid, although we know there's much to fear. We were moving mountain long before we knew we could. Ooh, yeah. There can be miracles when you believe. Though hope is frail, it's hard to keep. Who knows what miracles you can achieve when you believe. Somehow you will. You will when you believe. So, Believe. That was by Whitney and Mariah Carey.
Wow, beautiful. I don't know if you can see, but I have goosebumps all over. Amazing voice, EJ. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, and it's been just fascinating to hear your perspective towards, I always talk about these amazing gifts, like what we just spoke of, the gift of senses, and we undermine the gift of sound. And it's not just people's voice, it's about how you speak, how you listen, and what emotions you're listening. Like even a song which may have a beautiful music and a beautiful, like these days I hear some Spanish songs. I don't understand Spanish, but that song touches my heart, right? In many ways, or my soul, and it just rejuvenates me in many ways. It's just that these senses are so powerful, which we all forget, which is an amazing gift by the Almighty. And if you believe in Almighty, or if you believe in the larger universe, that's the gift we all have as human beings. And we need to cherish it, and we need to respect it, more importantly, on a day-to-day basis. So thank you for doing this song. It's been an absolute pleasure to hear that.
Thank you so much
on the show.
Thank you.